Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Modernizing Patient Support, Harnessing Advanced Automation, Artificial Intelligence, and Machine Learning to Improve Efficiency and Performance of PSPs, presented by Fierce Pharma and Mercalis. I'm Rebecca Kushmiter, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Before we get started, here are a few quick housekeeping notes. If you would like to use closed captions, just click on the button in the bottom right corner of the video player. If you close a panel and need to reopen it, just click its name at the top of the navigation bar and you can pop it back open again. There are additional resources for today's presentation. Those are available in the handouts panel. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on demand within 24 hours. And we would love to hear your questions. You can submit them during our presentation using the Submit Questions panel, and we'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers now. We're going to be joined by Jack McGuire, VP of Patient Support Services and Innovations and Product Development at Mercalis, and Karina Castagna, Senior Vice President of Commercial Strategy at Mercalis. To learn more about our speakers, you can check out their full bios in the Speaker Bios panel. Let's go ahead and get started. Over to you.
Nice. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Karina Castagna, Senior Vice President for Mercalis, and I'm very happy to be here along with Jack. The purpose of today's discussion is to talk about trends in healthcare, trends that are impacting our patient support services, and how we get patients started and keep them on therapy. There are two key areas that we're going to focus on, and that's how AI and automation are transforming patient support programs and what the future holds. And we'll go into the trade-offs between automation and AI and some of the shifts that are coming and where the industry is starting to look to. And so we'll start with the trends that are driving some changes across the space. There are a number of emerging trends. These are some of them, it's not comprehensive, that really underscore the need for more technology and patient support models. And I've got to be honest, a lot of this is grounded on efficiency. There's more and more and more pressure on profitability, and that comes from a lot of different parts of the business. Some of it's legislation, like the Inflation Reduction Act and the impact on gross to net and profitability. It's also the impact of PBMs and rebates and other pressures on margin. There's also a lot of competition in certain areas, like biosimilars, for instance, that are also putting a lot of pressure on margins. And so the need for doing things and executing on patient support programs with less and do more with less is a critical theme that we're seeing right now. There continues to be an impact on gross to net on the copay side due to maximizers and accumulators. And we are seeing that, especially on the maximizer side, that is still something that is very prevalent across the space and certainly has an impact on patients getting on medication. The pharmacy space continues to evolve, right? It seems like every other day we see headlines on CVS and Walgreens, and let's not forget all the regional pharmacies that continue to be pressured from a margin standpoint, and we continue to see fewer and fewer stores available for patients to pick up their prescription. In fact, just saw a statistic recently that said 40% of the country has a pharmacy desert, which means patients can't easily access their medications, which is why programs like this for patients are really critical in helping patients get on therapy. There are a lot of new models emerging around direct-to-consumer, and we've seen this for a number of years, but we've seen it be a little more prevalent lately, where manufacturers are exploring with different models that incorporate telemedicine and direct-to-consumer shipping of certain products, more over-the-counter medications, and just taking a different approach where there's flexibility to go direct-to-consumer. And lastly, it's the AI and really driving that forward. We're still on a starting point on the AI front, but there is a lot of appetite. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of curiosity on how to really leverage it to ensure that across the board, the business and patient support services, how we interact with patients and stakeholders, and that continuum stays relevant and up to speed with technology. And ultimately, it's about the balance, right? Because of all the factors that we just covered, and also depending on the life cycle of a specific drug, there needs to be this balance between elevating the patient experience and really limiting financial exposure. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of different tools that help to balance uh, programs overall and profitability. And there's also a lot of new technology that's emerging where programs are becoming more tech forward. And the focus is to use technology to supplement humans and allow humans to do higher quality activities. It's not meant to replace humans. This is a very human intensive business that we're in. But we are, our goal is to help supplement humans, allow humans to do what they do best and handle exceptions or the harder cases, and to really focus their energy on that area while technology takes care of the more routine tasks, getting patients enrolled and really taking a lot of what was inefficient and making it more efficient for our patient support programs. And so there are a couple of different areas where we're really looking for value. And the first, as I've mentioned, is efficiency. And what we mean here is really savings, right? If we have the right technology up front, if we have a tech forward approach to initiating patients, like a central intake pharmacy, which Jack will talk through more, it needs fewer people up front, which means that possibly you don't need hubs that are as big. If you have chatbots or AI agents answering the front line, you may not need as many people. That the model starts to shift and change, and there may be more efficiency that programs are able to realize. Personalization, AI and automation and all the cool technology that we're using is going to help us personalize more and more and really drive patients to the journey and the segmentation where we can help them the best based on their situation. Predictive analytics, with all the data that we have at our fingertips and more data coming our way, the goal is to be able to leverage it. Usually, what we hear and what we see is that there's just so much data that is housed but not really used, or the right insights and actions aren't taken from them. And so what we're hoping to do is do more of the use of the data. We want to use technology more to really help us sift through the data, find the insights, and really help us lead to actions that we can take in the business to improve performance of our agents, to improve the experience for our patients and providers and stakeholders, and ultimately drive better experiences. And lastly, we want to track impact metrics. So there are a lot of metrics that can be tracked at the end of the day. What we really want is faster speed to therapy, reduce provider burdens, and we want to keep patients on therapy longer. So it's about tracking those key areas that technology is meant to improve, and want to make sure that there's a use case and it's useful and it's meaningful and it's impactful overall to really drive that value. And so there are a couple different areas that we'll dig into deeper. And the first will be around improving access. So how do we really simplify getting patients in to patient support programs. The second is around creating more optionality around meeting patients and providers where they are to really drive ease in the enrollment process, navigating payer restrictions, and all the tools and technology that come behind that is a third. And then we'll go a little deeper on how we can use insights to really create those better patient journeys. And that I'll hand it over to Jack to take us through improving access.
Thank you, Karina. So Karina mentioned earlier, one of the models to which she referred was a digital pharmacy or a digital intake model that lends itself well to technology and automation. I'll be focusing there mostly through the technology and automation lens, and highlighting some of the areas where AI can index throughout that patient journey, to which Karina will expand on later. Then e-services, which is a part of that model, gets its own speaking platform, if you will, its own section, because there's a lot of evolution that has taken place with e-services and how that can truncate or the patient journey, essentially. So the digital pharmacy model, this flow is going to be very similar to a traditional pharmacy flow, but like I said, it lends itself well to technology and automation, and it also moves patient services closer to the provider's chair, closer to the EHR. So those can be initiated and patients can be activated earlier in that journey. So it ultimately truncates the journey. As a digital pharmacy / hub, being a covered entity, this is the latitude. So the entry point is the pharmacy itself, searchable within EHR's e-prescribing platforms. But the covered entity is what gives the latitude to then be able to move through a benefit investigation without consent. And do things in parallel, frankly, to, again, truncate that journey and increase that speed to therapy. So knowing that this is a shift in prescriber behavior, we start with educating the providers. So it's always important still to update collateral material where it exists on brand websites to publicize where your patient services can be initiated at which digital pharmacy and where to prescribe. It's also important to leverage the field teams to educate the providers that mean the most to your brand, and even activate some change champions in the form of biologics coordinators in some of those large offices. But one piece that doesn't get enough attention, and in my opinion is table stakes for shifting prescriber behavior, especially to an e-prescribing digital pharmacy model, is messaging within the EHR. And it also follows the desire to move closer to the provider. And the first step with that is messaging in the EHR. And it comes in various ways. It's messaging with where patient support services can be initiated at the digital pharmacy. It gives insight into the limited distribution network, which is often an unknown for the provider, and prescriptions end up getting sent to the wrong location. So educating on that limited distribution network is also important, and also giving brand visibility to the affordability program at that point of prescribing, which increases the likelihood that that brand will ultimately be prescribed. There are multiple ways to accomplish this EHR messaging through various ecosystem partners, and a couple of those ways actually leverage partnerships with the EHRs and e-prescribing platforms to leverage their ability to digitally engage the patient. So you move closer to the provider chair at point of prescribing, closer to that decision to treat, but you also can activate patients at that point of prescribing, which is important for multiple steps and more rich patient services that we can apply to those patients. So we've educated the prescriber on where to prescribe. The next piece B is that digital pharmacy or digital hub, searchable within the EHR where they can e-prescribe. That is easing the prescriber burden by allowing them an easy way of onboarding within their workflow. But at this point, also a lot of things take place in parallel to, as I mentioned earlier. One of those is digital patient engagement. If you didn't digitally engage the patient from the EHR, this is where, again, minutes after e-prescribing, digital patient engagement kicks off to expose that patient, bring them into your patient services ecosystem to other programs and rich services that can be offered, an important one being D, copay, which we'll touch on in just a moment. One of the other benefits, though, of this digital pharmacy intake model is you start with structured data, and that structured data allows the pharmacy management and case management systems to automate the patient profile creation and the case creation itself. So it reduces a lot of the manual burden that comes along with data entry, which is a significant spend when it comes to the traditional hub models and faxed forms and data entry, et cetera. Now, I can't assume that every fax machine will be destroyed anytime soon. So faxes could still come through this digital pharmacy. This is another area where AI can actually play and augment traditional OCR to get more accurate with creating the appropriate structure to a patient in a case from that form, reducing that data entry burden, again, through the lens of becoming more efficient. Also, what happens here is automation. The automation component is automated workflows and automated triggers for the next best action. And this is another area where AI can come into play, to which Karina will expand on later, where we've moved away from the traditional manually setting of to-dos within a CRM for the next case manager to accomplish that task and so on and so forth, through AI teeing up and predicting the next best action and initiating that, which then moves us into e-services, which in parallel but follows the entry point into the digital pharmacy is, and this is going to get its whole section in a couple of slides, but I'll just call out here that a robust suite of e-services with smart logic of which e-services need to be leveraged to get to the desired output needs to exist to make this the most automated model that requires less manual intervention. This is also a place where next best action and AI can be of use, and we'll touch on that in a couple of slides. And then on to copay. Copay is to which Karina referred is needing more personalization through AI and the use of e-services. Copay actually starts either at A or at B with that digital patient engagement, enrolling them into a copay program, and then marries that up with e-services. A lot of people don't realize that personalizing copay starts with those two things, and those e-services could be identifying that type of insurance. And then buttressing that up against AI-assisted policy search to identify government exclusion, or buttressing that up against a predictive analytics database to identify accumulators and maximizers, and ultimately automatically apply the appropriate copay offering to that patient, even to using e-services like an FAS to automatically determine if they're eligible for PAP. And then on to E. Every prescription that comes through the door is going to end with a transfer of that prescription, whether it's going to be to a commercial pharmacy or to a free goods pharmacy for patient assistance or bridge or quick start. Having a pharmacy management system with an enterprise model of transfer, leveraging electronic transfer protocols where applicable, is key to, again, reducing manual intervention needed to accomplish these steps. So from A through E, there's very little manual intervention or human intervention needed. But as Karina mentioned, we're not erasing the need for humans, but we're allowing them to do higher touch to provide service excellence to augment your brand and that patient provider experience. Moving on to the benefits of a model like this that is really baked in with automation and technology is that digital pharmacy. I mentioned earlier that is the entry point. So there's a new channel for onboarding, and that is e-prescribing to a digital pharmacy for patient services. But you see the wheels around that. It really is augmented by digital patient engagement throughout. That's a very important underlayment to this model. That's also where AI, chatbots, et cetera, can exist to do self-driven enrollment into various programs and to provide a very repeatable quality experience to that patient and provider. The e-services, which we'll get to next, are important to supercharge the speed at which a benefit investigation can take place to determine where that patient's access needs to be mitigated. Care coordination, again, there's always a human there to catch something if it needs to fall to higher touch. And then Karina mentioned the importance of data and analytics that will live throughout this entire model and the rest of our models. And some of the benefits, and sometimes I refer to these as side effects, are you're in the HCP workflow. They're prescribing. They don't have to jump off to a brand.com. They don't have to fill out a 7-page enrollment form. They can e-prescribe in workflow, which reduces a lot of that administrative burden on their office. And it truncates the time between decision to treat and that benefit investigation taking place. there's a significant amount of time where these manually filled out enrollment forms churn in the provider's office, and we'll see that in a couple slides with some timing. But removing that black hole from decision to treat to that getting to your patient services hub is really important because you're starting that journey earlier. And then reducing leakage, the time that those traditional enrollment forms sit in that provider's office waiting to be completed is time that they could go through a therapy switch and or receive therapy another way. So this is reducing leakage as well. And the latitude of the covered entity I mentioned is important because consent is not needed. When that comes into your digital pharmacy, you can directly move to a benefit investigation in parallel with other activities, which truncates that time that patient may need to initiate therapy. And then it's, again, less burden on the HCP office staff. When they adopt this, they realize that we, through e-services and technology, cobble together what is missing to create a complete patient profile and case, and they don't have to do that on the front end in their office. And then one really nice side effect of this model is it's adaptive to all phases of the brand's life cycle. So when you're thinking about messaging the providers or educating the providers on where to prescribe to your patient services, that can start with your digital pharmacy and one limited distribution pharmacy. And as your distribution network expands, as your brand gains, tiers on formulary, that can be expanded to multiple pharmacies. And the messaging to the provider never has to change. They can e-prescribe, whether to your digital pharmacy or direct to the pharmacy, even to a mature brand where that is being more prescribed directly to the commercial pharmacy. It doesn't require a huge change in your commercial strategy. So it's really nice that this model is adaptive throughout the brand's life cycle. Moving on to e-services, and it gets its own slide here. So e-services have evolved quite a bit. When e-services first came on the scenes, they were few and they had little reach and success or response rates associated with that little reach. And they were more manually leveraged, sometimes even in swivel chair, where a human has to press a button to initiate an e-service and then evaluate the outputs of that e-service and type it into a case management system, and then subsequently with other e-services. That model has shifted to more e-services existing for pharmacy and medical for the complete patient journey, but not just for extensive connectivity, but also redundancy. You want the extensive connectivity, and you may have multiple providers for one type of e-service because they may not overlap with their reach, and you want the most broad reach you can get. But also you want redundancy. If there's ever an outage or one of them gets turned off, you can quickly pivot to your next e-service in line. So picture dozens of e-services that exist in this model versus the one-off e-services used as yesterday, for instance. The other component of that is how elegantly they are put together. So there's a shift with just these e-services, again, that are utilized as one-off to packaging the dozens of e-services together, because each one of these will come with an API. And those APIs need to go into what we refer to as a middleware that is a gateway API that then translates that data to the CRM. So think of this as e-services being packaged into one giant engine. So you streamline the API integrations needed. And this model also allows itself to agnostically plug into various CRMs, including manufacturer CRMs. It takes years to curate the number of vendors and API integrations that take place to create a full pharmacy and medical flow of e-services with redundancy. You don't have to go through that years of work. You can leverage a partner to basically tee that up that you can plug into. And we've shifted away from, again, the one-off use of e-services to you start with known inputs and you have a desired output, a summary of benefits, for instance. The inputs go into this e-services engine, and then e-services are subsequently used to get to the desired outcome. And then they take the off-ramp and fall into the next step in the patient journey. On number 4, where that is being evolved, is today this is human trained, so the flows are created. It's still automated, so there's smart logic with the next best action, but the future of this is AI to derive the next best action based on that patient payer matrix, to then identify the inputs and the desired output and automatically take the path of least resistance and using the appropriate e-services providers, and then learn with more and more repeated use to get to just a more intelligent flow of these services. So there's just an elegant way to package these versus how they've been used in the past. And then packaging the automation and technology with a digital intake pharmacy model with the e-services and the automation to which I referred that drive those results in true efficiency and time savings. So looking at a traditional model, and you see the 6+ days, I don't want that to be lost on anyone that an enrollment form spends a lot of time in an office before it lands at your hub. A traditional model can take weeks if all of these steps are taken manually to get to ultimately what you're trying to achieve. The same exact use case as the traditional hub model, PA required, for instance, can go from weeks down to days. The time from decision to treat to receiving that is real time via e-prescribing. Consent is not needed to move directly into an EBV and EBI. And those transactions take less than a minute. And the EPA process has also truncated a lot of the time spent with these pending prior authorizations. And PBMs are prioritizing the electronic prior authorizations over the manual submissions, which further truncate the time there. And then what I like to refer to as the happy path is next with covered no restrictions. So this is truly a happy path, but you can move from days even to same day. And this is something that we have seen. This also is the same for Bridge or Quick Start or PAP, leveraging the automation to which I referred, the e-services, that automated eligibility determination that has a more personalized approach, some of which can be augmented with AI, can result in a same-day prescription transfer for from decision to treat, which is pretty amazing to see, to go from weeks to same day. Karina, I'll pass it back to you.
Yes, great. Thank you, Jack. So Jack focused a lot on reducing the time that it takes to get patients from start through a first prescription using technology. So pharmacy intake model, e-services, and other technology that really helps to advance that, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need to get patients on those life-altering medications that they need when they need them. And so the second component, this is a component of what Jack spoke about, which is enrollment. And our goal is really to automate it with technology. There's a lot of paper and faxes and a lot that goes on, a lot of manual data entry that occurs on the other end of the fence of that fax that's received. And our goal is to advance it. So like Jack said, we probably aren't going to get rid of every fax machine out there, but we could automate some of what comes after. And so OCR, for instance, is one technology that is pretty available now. There's more advancement going on because OCR has limitations, but with the combination of OCR and AI, what we're aiming to do is to really capture all those faxes and other things that come in that are not digital enrollment channels, and turn them into a digital intake that enables technology to do that instead of people picking up sheets from the faxes, typing away, which can create more mistakes or delays depending on the bandwidth. And then there are a couple other areas here that, again, there are areas where I'm sure everyone, when you call the airline, you're being greeted by an AI agent now. And a lot of other areas are starting to use these more and more. But it's having a virtual agent be the first line that answers the simple questions. To really get past the easy to answer things that are more transactional, like how much money do I have left on my copay card, for instance, to enable the agents to really focus on the more complex patient cases that truly need more hand-holding. And there was a question around compliance in the chat. I think every compliance team is going to be a little different. I do think that you're not alone We're hearing that there's still a lot of hesitancy, sorry about that, out there because pharma tends to be cautious and everything's pre-approved. And so there is a need and there's for others to go first sometimes. But there are lots of steps that can be taken. There's IVRs where it's more linear. If a patient asks a question, there's A and B answers, and those can be pre-approved. Or the information that is feeding the AI agent is pre-approved, but only that information can't be used. And then there's the Gen AI, which is truly going to create more of that human-like processing of information and create different answers. And so there may be a different entry point with a easier to start place for those that tend to be, on the more protective side of the compliance arm overall. But overall, I think compliance is super important here, and we're all learning and evolving at the same time. And then there's automated eligibility. So for programs like copay or for even PAP programs, we're looking at areas where eligibility screening could be automated to really focus on those patients that need to be put on programs and allow that to happen more instantly. And these are a couple other areas. And so it's really about creating an AI-powered contact center. And I've got to say, I've emphasized this, no one is here yet that I'm aware of from a pharma lens, but a lot of companies are starting to consider different options, looking to explore different options. And these are elements that where the technology is there to a certain degree. It's still evolving, but you can see here in some of the stats that it is an area of focus, and 93% feel technology is very important. This was from a WebEx global survey. 75% say that having too many manual processes and lack of automation create more problems and more bottlenecks. And 80% feel technology is really important because it helps to create a better patient experience. And so what are some of those elements that are in this future AI-powered contact center? And these are 5 of the core ones. So the first one's about customer service automation. So even when there are humans on the other end answering the phone, there are tools like call summaries, so that the agent doesn't have to search the notes, call guides that can feed the database of answers that an agent should be answering to a specific question that patient or provider has on the phone, for instance. Sentiment analysis, where the AI is getting a feel for the tone on the call and understanding whether it's a good call or whether there's something wrong and a manager needs to intervene and escalate the call. That also can help feed the quality of training or interventions for that agent. Chatbots are something that we're all becoming more and more familiar with. And sometimes, they're very useful. Sometimes they're a little less useful these days, but that's the evolution of where the technology is right now. And these are, common. Again, they're fed off of the answers that we feed into the model. And there are different levels of kind of technology and capabilities that these chatbots are able to do right now, like answer, an A/B linear question or get more dynamic with a knowledge base that the chatbots can learn from. Similar with the voice assistants, I spoke about AI agents answering the phone, kind of operates similar to that chatbot. The sentiment analysis. One more thing I'll say about this is that when the a technology, the AI is listening on the call. There's a lot that can happen during the call, but there's a lot that can happen after the call, like that agent training, allowing for managers to have more insights into calls and information that's going to help them deliver better, and uptrain all of the agents to deliver better experiences for patients. Quality scoring and AE reporting, all of that fun stuff that needs to happen from a quality and compliance standpoint. We can do better when we have technology that's assisting us, and then there's less work to do for humans to really QC it after the fact. And ultimately, it's machine learning, it's the evolution of all of these models, and it'll be a continuous process. We're seeing, a lot of this being applied to other industries, but we're at the starting point for this being applied to our industry. So we'll continue to try and evolve it. From a payer lens, there's advancements in terms of how AI is helping us to capture payer information and the landscape, to understand the payer landscape, payer policies, and also around electronic prior authorization tools that enable us to get more accurate and get faster with prior authorization submissions for specialty medications. And so, this has been a landscape that is constantly evolving, and we've all lived it and seen it. And a lot of, the reason behind why patient support services exist today is because of the complexity in the payer landscape for specialty medications. And so it starts with finding the right form. There are tools out there like Policy Reporter that are constantly evolving and starting to use more AI to really find and get deeper and more accurate and more timely with finding all the right payer forms at the national level, and getting more granular into the regional and sub levels across the point to understand what the payer landscape is in terms of specific policies for any drug out there. It's also helping us to aggregate the forms and track the forms, and really with the combination of claims data and payer policy, understand how payers are really acting on policies and whether the reality of the claims data matches up with the policy landscape across the board. So we're just getting more and more insight and more access to more information and more insights that help us to really create a better picture of the policy landscape and how that's being actioned on. And it's also helping us get better with prior authorizations. And so in the world that we live in, we have electronic prior auths, and they work pretty efficiently, but there's a lot of work that has to be done by the doctor's office. And so the future, evolution, and there are lots of smaller companies and big companies alike that are exploring different things on the PA side, but we're seeing everything from prior authorization companies that are partnering with payers to be the payer lens on, the first kind of ping. It comes in through their portal. They green, yellow, red tag it and say these are aligned to payer policy. These need review. These, don't align. To help payers. And on the provider side, it's starting to show up as well, where there are some platforms that are starting to use more AI to help providers understand whether a submission that is being submitted is complete, and or if it's missing something that could help get better overall approval rates. And so we're just overall, it's evolving. It's not an easy area to tackle, but there is some innovation, and there is a lot of new companies and new tools that are being explored that could better leverage AI to help bring more ease and functionality to help doctors and doctors' offices get those prior authorizations approved for patients. And lastly, predictive analytics. It's all about insights, and it's all about how those insights can drive actions. And so the focus at Mercalis is really around how we leverage data and how we learn from data and how we use that to personalize experiences, how we use that to drive more efficiency, how we use that to find the right balance behind the human intervention and where technology plays a role. We're not in a place with technology in patient support services where it's tech only and you never need humans. The reality is that because of the complexities of patients and patient experiences and the payer landscape, and especially medications and the complexities of helping patients get started the right way and to stay on therapy, we actually believe that the human element is more critical than ever to complement technology. But technology and advancements to help personalize are really going to help us create a better overall experience for our patients and providers. And so we're at the starting point of unlocking AI's promise, of unlocking the promise of tech forward and tech enabled patient support programs. And 2025 is just the beginning. We're going to see a lot more advancements. 2025 is a year of experimentation and finding use cases that are relevant. And it's important to start there with a need instead of just using technology for the sake of it. But it's around experimenting and really learning from that and exploring how to unlock that promise so that we can deliver more for our patients. Here are a couple interesting statistics from a few different studies, including McKinsey and Deloitte, around adoption. And this is speaking more broadly to our healthcare space. But there are estimates that this will help us save a significant amount of money because it's 200 to 360 billion estimated by McKinsey due to advances in automation and more of the easy, more manual things that happen within our healthcare system. And that's the low-hanging fruit around where automation and AI could play. A majority, 60% plus of life science executives are interested and looking for Gen AI or digital transformation trends to help shape and continue to augment that patient experience and drive more efficiencies. And the focus, again, there's a lot of focus on the back end of eliminating those repetitive tasks, adding more automation, helping to elevate the back office so that they're more knowledgeable with the help of AI assisting them along that patient journey. In addition to what patients see, but the back end will be the lower hanging fruit in 2025, and the front end of the patient experience will come shortly after. And I'll let Jack walk us through, some approaches and best practices around getting started.
Thank you, Karina. This is really, really important when you're thinking about this level of investment in technology and AI to augment your patient support program or your hub. And it needs to start with ensuring that your vision and objectives align with what you're trying to achieve. One of the easy ones is efficiency. We want to see more efficiency. We want to be able to reduce the number of heads on a program, but it doesn't need to just lie there, because as Karina mentioned earlier, AI and technology can increase quality. It can be a repeatable process. It can also allow, when you've automated all of those keystrokes, it also allows the humans to be of a higher caliber when they do need to touch a patient or a provider. which applies service excellence to a brand. So ensuring your vision and objectives are aligned with what you're trying to achieve is really important. And the next step may be the most important, and that's identifying the use cases. We're all somewhat babes in the woods when it comes to applying this technology. There's no shame in partnering with, a global technology juggernaut to help you work through the use cases and how to implement these. But it has to start with the use cases. Some of them are less attractive than others with, really advanced AI, but they could be back office functions. It could be OCR, automated enrollment, so many different things where you can free up an agent's time and automate tasks. So identifying the use cases throughout the patient journey is important to know where you want to start. And then number 3 is basically picking that AI technology, that AI algorithm, and building that data and technology foundation. That's important. And you can also leverage, again, some of those in the technology industry that are farther along to help you do that. And then ensuring your data is clean and ready is extremely important. So if you start with bad master data, you're already getting the wrong answer. If you apply technology and automation to bad data, you're going to get the wrong answer faster and more often. So you have to get your data scrubbed and ready. And then train the model is really important. So you may even be leveraging other data sets to train that model to give it a good starting place. And then security and compliance are going to come into that with how you integrate that with your infrastructure. And number 4 is our motto. And it's kind of a pharmacist motto of, dosing to efficacy, of start low and go slow. It's pilot and test the solutions for the use cases. So it's proof of concept. You start small and you test with a willing partner to be able to learn if it's going to truly have the impact. And then you measure and optimize throughout the entire process to tweak that AI model, to feed it more data, to get it ready for prime time. And ultimately 6 is exactly that. The desire would be to go through these steps methodically, get through proof of concept, and then be able to scale that to other therapeutic areas, other programs, to really start to leverage the efficiency and the quality that technology can truly provide. But it's important to not try to start at 4. The first 3 need to be very well thought out, and even leveraging a partner who's done this to make sure you don't take a wrong turn, because it could put you all the way back to 1 after years of work.
All right. So Scott Dulitz is our current CEO at Mercalis. And from a Mercalis lens, we're really leaning into AI and automation. And these are the 3 areas that we've been focused on. So shifting from information to insights, curating and personalizing that patient experience, and looking at how we automate areas that can be automated, and really take the routine labor out of the system to drive more efficiency. But at the end of the day, we just want to leave you with a thought, and then we'll dive into the Q&A. But AI is a journey. You have to start small and learn fast and adapt from there. It's where things are today. And so the goal is really to make it a learning experience and learn from it and continually adapt from there. And it's the approach that we've been taking, and that has been fruitful for us so far. So we will answer some questions in the Q&A now.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, let's go ahead to the Q&A. Just as a reminder, you can still submit questions using the Submit Questions panel on your screen. To get started, what is the trade-off between automation versus AI? How do you assess when you should consider one over the other?
Jack, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Karina. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So there are different levels of technology that can come into play, and this touches on a question that came up as well. So for instance, automation could be more of an A/B. Or, for instance, our e-services. We have an e-service that calls a certain provider for finding insurance, another one that helps to find the right prior authorization form. And we can sequence that in a way that we know is the right sequence for that specific drug. So that is more of an example of automation. Or, with a chatbot, telling it, if you answer A, you can only have these three answers, and then you click a bubble to answer it instead of giving it the freedom to make up its own answer. So those are examples where it's more on the automation side of the continuum. And then there are different kind of levels that kind of grow with that around using basic AI, which is still, more of more linear and where you have more control over the answers, to Gen AI and more of the large language models where you're teaching it to be more like a human and have, its own series. And so there are different levels of technology, and that's why starting with the goal and starting with the use case that you're solving for is critical, because you may, look at that and say, well, I really don't need AI for this. I need something more basic, and it's actually going to better align with the needs for our brand and our organization.
Well, thank you for that answer. Moving on, do you anticipate that this AI tool will help reduce the number of field reimbursement managers needed?
I can take that one, Karina, if you'd like.
Sure.
I do believe that it could. A lot of what is going to be an output in the field manager's portal view, if you will. So an extension of the CRM is what the field managers are going to use for those insights. When you make those insights much more rich, and you give them, an example would be even the prior authorization status and denial reason, et cetera. They're going to be able to leverage that data more effectively and possibly be more efficient themselves, as well as that field portal can leverage some of those AI-driven responses with communication to the providers, or pokes, if you will, if there is a pending PA. So there's a blend of them being more efficient because the data they have is richer from which to work, versus having to go in with just an aggregate number of patients that have a PA pending. As well as leveraging kind of a virtual field agent with some of this technology to reach the providers as well. So I believe it could.
All right. And how do you see AI being used for infusion medication that extend to clinics and not just pharmacies?
I'm not quite sure. Karina, do you want to take a stab at it?
So I am not 100% sure here, but generally, I mean, the similar AI tools could be used. So for instance, for scheduling infusion appointments, for coordination of care with providers, for, tracking, that patient to ensure that they are on top of their infusions, and reminding them of appointments. So there's a lot that AI can do here as well. And since we were just on that pharmacy question, I did see another question related to the pharmacy model of starting patients, which could be similar here with the prescribing to the intake pharmacy. And Jack, feel free to elaborate here. But we really see this as the intake model is appropriate for prescriptions that are, for instance, like specialty light prescriptions where there's prior authorization required, where there's still some work that needs to be centralized to help patients get on therapy. And it doesn't have to be for 100%. There are some models that are, limited distribution, where the brand decides this is how we want to start every patient. There's patient segmentation from the beginning on getting them through therapy, getting them on PAP, and making sure they go somewhere. And there are other brands that say this is a channel for the doctor that needs extra support for a specific patient segmentation. And in other cases, they write it to their specialty pharmacy. So it can work either way.
For service providers like Mercalis, what do you see as the biggest obstacles to implementing at scale AI-related capabilities, and how are you planning to address that?
At the end of the day, it comes down to the steps that Jack talked about. We are just like everyone else, leaning in heavily, but it's new for everyone, and we are, all of our clients at Mercalis are life science companies, and they have, still a lot of concern from a compliance side, from a legal side, and so we're navigating it all. We're piloting, we're testing, we're learning so that we can get ahead of the curve and really help our life science partners advance in this area. But it's a new area for everyone, and so I think that's going to be part of the challenge. That it's a learning continuum, but we're diving head in and look forward to really partnering with life science companies to advance this.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate on that. So the compliance piece, that the medical legal review that would occur with our life sciences partners, I wouldn't call it an obstacle, but it will definitely be a throttle with how much AI is leveraged. An example would be how many multimodal data sets can you let a scripted AI chatbot leverage versus an unscripted AI chatbot that would have much more wide range of response because it could play jazz more than a scripted AI chatbot. So a lot of what our legal review from our clients, life sciences partners, will throttle some of the adoption of more broadly used AI.
Jack, I know you actually answered this directly, but I think it's worth discussing. How does a healthcare provider or a patient access a human if there's an issue that isn't standard or if there's a problem?
Of course, yeah. So within the AI chatbots or even voice assisted AI, there's always a ripcord to pull to be able to live chat with an agent or speak with an agent, as well as the AI component of that chatbot will also know its limitations. When it gets to a place where it may have tried to respond multiple times to a question unsuccessfully, that can drop that to an agent in queue to be able to answer that. So the goal would never be to force someone to an automated experience if they're not getting a rich enough response, and they always have the ripcord they can pull to get to an agent with chat or voice.
Yeah, that's so important to so many people. And I think we are reaching the end of our time here, so we have time for one more question for the folks that we weren't able to get to you. We will try and respond in person after the webinar. But to wrap this up today, specific to PSPs, where does Mercalis believe the biggest opportunity sits?
Is going back to the segment about which I spoke with technology and automation. You can include some AI into that, but there's definitely an opportunity to become more efficient throughout that process, to be able to take those more menial tasks, automate those, or give those to a digital source of intelligence, if you will, versus having a human spend time on that. That's going to be more efficient and allow those humans to index on higher touch function and deliver more service excellence to patients and providers. I think that is a huge opportunity, as well as my comments around moving closer to the provider chair, not just with messaging, but also with meeting them in workflow for prescribing and starting that patient services support journey or that patient journey earlier, and activating more patients earlier and more often, I think is necessary to move closer to the provider and leverage automation throughout. Karina, would you like to add anything to that?
The only thing I will add is to bring us back to the beginning. It's really about driving more efficiency and creating more value through performance. And so that's how we're leveraging technology. It's around really accomplishing those two goals and helping our humans behind those phone lines do what they do best and help with the more complex cases.
All right, well, thank you both so much, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. As a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be available on demand within 24 hours. We greatly appreciate your participation, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you so much.
Thank